Hi there. This is the first of our video blogs that we're going to do, and we're going to cover this article about how to paint detail and edges in a landscape. This is the landscape that we will be using and working with as our example. It's by an old master Dutch painter. I believe it's pronounced Habema. I may be pronouncing that wrong. Don't hold it against me if I am. And it's a nice wooded landscape that I'm sure any of you, even if it's not your style, any of you would be happy to paint, or at least know the exact procedure that was used to paint it. And that's what my teaching hopefully will get you to be doing. Okay, let's scroll down the page. It's like I'm sitting there with you, I hope, going through things. Okay, let's focus on a detail of this, of that painting that I showed you above there. I want you to look at the black letter A, specifically to the right of it. Now, do you see how these leaves overlap the sky where my arrow is? See this area? This is painted over the sky. It's not painted around the sky. This is not a drawing. This is not outlines where my arrow is. I'm not outlining everything and carefully filling it in with brushes, little tiny brushes, and painting all around, being very careful. The sky, the background, is painted first. This area where my arrow is going, all this area, this is all painted over the already painted background of the sky. It is most likely done after the sky has already dried. Painting into a wet layer, like I will explain soon, helps to get rid of that cutout look, very hard edges. That's not something that most people want, unless you're doing a modern type of a painting, of which this teaching really is not about. Now, if you look to the left of the letter B and the highlighted leaves, all around the letter C, all around this area, see where my arrow is? And down here, all these very bright lights. You'll see another example of detail being painted over, not around an area. All these are painted over. The step-by-step process, let's try to take it really all the way through. Let's try to take the step-by-step process. It will be something like the following. And let's pretend that we're going to be painting this area over here, to the left of the letter B, okay? How would this area have been built up in the painting process? Layering, that is. Okay. Let's assume that we're starting from after the dark areas of the tree in the background had already dried. See, they were around this color. See up here, this dark area. You can see some of it coming through underneath here. Back here where my arrow is, this dark areas. Not over here, not over here. Back right where the point of the arrow is. The dark areas would already have been dried. Now an intermediate glaze layer would have been applied. And the steps from this point, starting with the intermediate glaze layer, would have been, you would use a bristle brush, the size of which would fit this area. It would be a smaller brush. As an example, for the size-wise, you might want the bristles to be the width of this letter B in itself. That's a decent size. That's a good example that I could give you here. Now, you would take that bristle brush, you would dip it into a darker green, and thin that green paint down with your medium. Now, for example, perhaps the mixture would have been maybe a sap green with a little burnt umber, or perhaps a raw umber with some ultramarine blue. The color mixture is not what I'm focusing on here, so I'm just giving general examples. Now, what we're doing, we're only mixing color and thinning in paint, getting it to the right consistency. Okay, now on to step 2, loading your paintbrush. Now this paint, you don't want this paint to really cover anything. Therefore, we do not need thick paint loaded onto your brush. Your goal here is to only make the canvas wet, so you can paint into it and add a thin film of color. And when I say wet, it's not dripping wet either, just a very damp film. Think of it as a stain. Now apply this thin film of color over the dried area where you're going to work on the detail. This gives you a base, the base which you will work into as you build up the next layers. Now, the next step you would be, first of all, you got to make sure that you have a clean brush, very clean brush. Then you would create a mixture for the light colors of your leaves. You do this on your palette, but we're not talking about the lightest lights where my arrow is. See these really bright lights? Really bright? Not talking about that. We're talking more about this areas where my arrow is here. These areas. Not here, not this. More over here. What you would do then, you would make a mixture, perhaps a sap green mixed into a lighter gray. Again, I'm not focusing on color mixtures here. That's not the point of this article. And what we're going to do now is take a small sable brush to apply the mixture which you just made right into the thin film of color. You will do this using dabs with the point of your of that small sable paintbrush. The harder you push, the larger the dab for a larger clump of leaves. Very logical. Do not try to paint every individual leaf at this point. It doesn't matter. You're just painting lighter areas.